Fusp.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another brief history video. Today we'll be discussing the blunder that was the end and rebirth of Fusp, that being Cactus Jack Part II. Part 2 was a notorious low point for the channel, with its performance nearly causing the end of Cactus Jack. However, it would serve as a warning sign for us to change Fusp for the better, or else we'll be damned to YouTube hell. There's a lot of layers to discuss, so let's hop into it.
Cactus Jack began development in late 2022, around the time Beanie Man Season 1 was ending and Retail Workers was coming out. During this time, Fusp animations were very lackluster when it came to script writing, with projects like Retail Workers having no fully written script, and others like the last two Beanie Man episodes having fully written scripts that were rushed and simple. These scripts were also written months apart from the previous episodes, making the story very incohesive. When Part 1 of Cactus Jack was written, these problems showed themselves, with the script being very lackluster and simple. However, the structure and simplicity of the episode's story helped mask the basic outline, and the episode performed decently well. After the release of Part 1, we would continue to write scripts after episodes came out instead of during the same time, which did not help Cactus Jack's troubled story. The main issue we had with Cactus Jack was its identity, as we weren't sure what we wanted the show to be. Part 1 showed all sorts of violence, action, brotherhood, and other small story details, with no direct detail being a main plot point. We weren't sure if we wanted Cactus Jack to be like Beanie Man with the action, or if we wanted it to be like Retail Workers with the gore and horror, nor were we even sure how to do Cactus Jack as its own thing. These identity issues would show themselves in Part 2, mainly with its portrayals of what we call the Beanie Man Season 1 formula.
Our basic story for Cactus Jack would have the first three parts set up Jack and Francis as characters, with Part 3 introducing the main villain, that being Bulge, and the last three parts showing Jack and Francis fighting against Bulge in a future timeline, making the series itself 6 parts. After Part 1 we needed a filler episode to build Jack and Francis up as characters before we go to the Bulge episode. I went back to what I know, which is the Beanie Man Season 1 formula, going for a Villain of the Week story, as playing as it safe as I could have. The episode lacked a script and it instead had a brief outline which consisted of a prison break, villain montage, bar fight, Francis gearing up, a final battle, Jack saving Francis, and the wolf as the main villain.
The wolf was inspired by Death from Puss in Boots, with a mix of Guy from Beanie Man Season 1. His character was meant to serve as a Wild West bounty hunter who would go after Jack and Francis, as requested by the sheriff, to hunt them down after their prison escape. We wanted the wolf to be an intimidating and interesting villain, but he turned out to be anything but that. The wolf became an uninteresting blank slate that could barely even qualify as a character, not being helped by the lackluster performance from Shadow. His introduction would just be confusing, and his role in the episode would be nothing more than an obstacle to Jack and Francis, only serving as an opponent.
This episode tried to build on Jack and Francis' relationship, showing both the bond between the two, as well as Jack becoming stronger and more reliable to Francis. Jack would help aid Francis when he became hurt, as well as saving him at the end of the episode, showing that Jack had grown a lot during the course of the episode.
I did it!
Well done, Jack.
These would be the highlights of the episode, showing that Jack and Francis did have character changes. As for the animation, I did try some new styles to see how they would work, going for more dynamic fight scenes and perspectives. This makes some scenes a bit more janky than others, and especially in the bar fight you can really notice that. There were some other references thrown in there, like the black and white scene for example being inspired by Kill Bill. This one scene looking like this scene from Puss in Boots.
You're horrible!
And finally, the end scene with the wolf being inspired by a James Bond Live and Let Die. Once the animation was done, the episode would be edited and voiced with us recording the voice lines at the last minute based off basic outlines. I would then upload the video and sit back and wait for the reviews to pour in.
Part 2 would come out with raving reviews, becoming our best project in all of Fusp history.
Is what we would have said if that happened.
This episode would perform horribly, with it having the worst first 24-hour performance in all of modern Fusp. Not only was this engagement absolutely horrible, but then the reviews came in, and they were not positive. Many of the reviews stated similar things, with the main issues being the audio quality, animation, and especially the writing.
This episode would get absolutely torn apart. It would leave us in a really bad spot animation-wise. If Cactus Jack wasn't performing well view-wise, we could have just promoted it better. And if it wasn't doing well critically, we could have taken more time to create a better story. But how was we meant to continue Cactus Jack if both reviews and views-wise, it was both negative? It seemed like a losing battle. If we continued Cactus Jack, especially since the Part 2 took 2 months to create, we couldn't afford to spend 2 months each on 4 separate parts for a chance of them all performing badly.
Ultimately, we had to make a decision. Do we cancel Cactus Jack and just move on? Or do we try to somehow save what we could? Both options were equally as likely, but we would ultimately come down to a compromise. We would do 3 more parts of Cactus Jack to finish up the story, and if they performed well, we would continue to make Cactus Jack. And if they didn't, we would end it at part 5 and just move on.
Me and Shadow would come up with a brief outline how we wanted to continue Cactus Jack. We'd have these final 3 parts be one big cohesive story to end Cactus Jack, or continue depending on the reception of these final 3 parts. But before we did that, we needed a plan. We had 4 main rules when it came to our planning: finally having fully and finalised scripts, a consistent story, well-balanced and pre-recorded voice lines and audio, and consistent and well-drawn animation. After working with these 4 rules, we would write the scripts for these 3 parts, coming up with all sorts of new ideas.
We would ditch the idea of the future plot for the last few parts, but still stick with Bulge as the main villain. However, we would take his villainous arc to a new level, having him grow more villainous as the episodes went on. We would have Jack and Francis get kicked out of their old town and be found by Bulge, traveling to Valentine with him where they would meet Tree Goblin.
It's weird to think that Tree Goblin was a new addition to this story, serving as a friend to Jack and Francis, who opened their eyes to the truth of Bulge. He also helped how they could fight against him, inspiring them to use their thievery skills to steal from the rich and give to the poor.
We then decided to bring back the wolf for part 4, but this time around we gave him more depth and emotion, introducing his family. It would be revealed that he only did these jobs to provide for his family, and when his wife found out he still did them, she would leave with the kids, causing the wolf to form a hatred for Jack and Francis, lusting to kill them. We would then have Jack and Francis be exposed to Bulge's true colors, with the wolf coming in to detain them.
For the finale, we had Jack and Francis about to be hung by Bulge and the wolf, with them being saved by Tree Goblin.
Howdy, gentlemen.
But they would all work together to defeat the wolf. The 3 would then confront Bulge, coming face to face with his machine. His machine would be hinted at like earlier on in the series, with one reference being to Jack and Francis not being allowed near his house.
It's a free town, but there's only one word. Stay off my property.
It would ultimately be revealed that Bulge was from another world and was using the townsfolk and rich people of the town to make as much money as possible and find the resources to build his machine. This was so his drug cartel could take over this dimension, the drug cartel in question being Pablo's cartel.
We would spend a couple of days solely on writing these 3 episodes, brainstorming all sorts of ideas, scenes, and character motives. Once we were happy with the finished scripts, we would begin animation, with MrFusp working on the animation and I working on the backgrounds. We would also decide to try and release episodes a bit closer together, working on them simultaneously instead of one at a time like we did with Beanie Man Season 1.
Projects like Beanie Man Season 2 would be influenced, with the scripts getting more detailed and animation quality improving, voice lines being recorded in advance, and audio being fixed. Projects like Raging Wilfred and Brick Movies be pushed to the side to make way for these projects and focus on them longer, giving them more detail and time to improve instead of being rushed.
After months of work, we would release the first trailer for part 3, and we began the hype train.
Part 3 would have 2 trailers put out, and it would be released late in April. We were nervous to see what would happen, not sure if all our plans would pay off. At last, we had to try. Part 3 would release and would be more successful than Part 2 in every category. Not only performing better views-wise, but also just getting lots of positive reception and feedback. Part 4 would release a few weeks later with similar results, gaining even more views in the first 24 hours and even more positive feedback, especially concerning the character of the wolf. The wolf wasn't the only character getting looked at positively, however, with other characters like Jack, Francis, Tree Goblin, and even Bulge getting new character traits, motives, arcs, and positive reviews from fans.
It seemed that Cactus Jack was going in a good direction, gaining both the traction and the positivity we were hoping it would get. But we still had one more episode to release, the finale. This episode's performance would settle once and for all whether or not Cactus Jack would stick around or be cancelled, and we would work on it as best we could, and it wouldn't come out till late June, about a month and a half after part 4.
The episode would be published and it would seal Cactus Jack's fate. Cactus Jack would continue. Part 5 performed brilliantly in the first 24 hours, making nearly 3 times the amount of views that Part 2 made in its first 24 hours. Not only did it do well view-wise, but the reviews for this episode were incredibly positive, with the finale becoming one of the best reviewed Fusp projects of all time. This part would also become the highest performing Fusp animation of 2023, beating out the first 5 episodes of Beanie Man Season 2. And wow, that's an accomplishment.
All the hard work had paid off, and Cactus Jack not only boosted channel viewership, but more importantly, it did well and was received better than any other project before it. Ultimately, Cactus Jack would serve as a stepping stone for us, and it would send us into a new era of Fusp. Our animations became higher quality, focused on the writing a bit more, the audio was fixed up, the editing touched up, and more. Cactus Jack made us realize what we needed to do to progress, and it would help us learn what we needed to do to improve our content for all sorts of future projects. While at first Part 2 seemed to show that Cactus Jack would bomb as a series, we would work as hard as we could to improve upon it, and it would pay off, shown by the finale's performance. This just goes to show that progressing and working as hard as you can will always pay off, even if it takes some time. Parts 3 and 4 were great, but it took until Part 5 for Cactus Jack to finally solidify itself as a top Fusp project.
Wherever you may be in your animation or storytelling capabilities, never stop progressing. Even if your content is underperforming, it might just be a sign to improve instead of cancel it. Once again, thank you to everyone who watched this video and continues to support us. You are the reason we continue to better our content and the reason we're able to make it in the first place. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. See ya.